You were one of probably 32 listed screenwriters for the Flintstones, the movie. What was that whole experience like for you?
Well, what happened on that was right after I did The Running Man, Rob Cohen, who's best known for directing a lot of big movies, Fast and the Furious and the Mummy movies. He's kind of a Renaissance man. He started out as a story reader at Universal, like sort of the lowest job in the corporate chain, and he got famous right away. His first day at work, they asked him to read a script, and do you recommend the script? So he says, I recommend the script to be a hit movie. And his boss says, look, you don't understand. It's your first day at work. Nothing's that good. No one's going to respect your opinion if you fanboy over everything. And he says, no, it's look, okay. You want to, okay, it's your head. I'll send this upstairs and you'll hear about it later. So it turned out it was the movie The Sting, which became a great hit. And to this day, he has framed on his office, right? He has his recommendation of The Sting, checking all the boxes, and the note from his boss, you do not want to turn this in, frame. But anyway, Rob at this time, he later on became a director. At this time, he's still a studio executive. And we spent a lot of time working on The Running Man together. And he realized, I'm a funny guy, even though my movies have comedy relief, but I can be even funnier than that. It's not always appropriate in these action movies. So he said, listen, you work with Joel Silver a lot. We have the rights to do the Flintstones, and he tells me he's a huge Flintstone fan, and he wants to produce it. Is this just BS or is this true? I said, no, I swear you wouldn't expect it, but he is a huge Flintstone fan. He has the lunchbox and toys, it's for real. He said, all right, let's do the Flintstones movie. So we made a deal. I wrote the script for the Flintstones. I was the first writer to write a script for the Flintstones. And then almost immediately, this production company that had a deal with Columbia called Keith Barris Productions, the same people that had made The Running Man, started to get into financial trouble. They were overextended. And they were going to lose the rights to the Flintstones. So Joel Silver calls me up and says, listen, I need you to drop what you're doing for Fox and write the Flintstones first. And I go, no, Joel, it doesn't work that way. The Flintstones is for Columbia. I have a contract to write a movie for Fox, which I think is for you. And if I don't deliver it on time, I will be in trouble. So my agent and my lawyer call him up and say, okay, if you'll write a letter to Steve, I give you permission to, dear Steve, I'm a producer on the 20th Century Fox lot, and I hereby give you permission to fuck over 20th Century Fox and not write your script for us, so you can do my script for the other studio first. So he says, well, I'm not going to write that letter. So then Joel said, what's going to happen now is Columbia is going to lose the rights to the Flintstones. And it'll be your fault, like he says to me. My fault, I wrote the script. So sure enough, I wrote the Fox movie first. By the time they turned their attention to the Flintstones, the cartoon company ended up going to Universal. Universal bought it from Columbia because the current owners were overstretched. So I get a phone call after that. Steven Spielberg wants to meet you. He likes the script of the Flintstones. He's producing it. So I go to a meeting with Steven Spielberg. This is great. Two Stevens in the room at the same time. And instead, what's her name? She produces all his movies. Marshall?
Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh, Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy meets me. She has her leg in a cast. She broke her ankle skiing. She says, I'm sorry, Steven couldn't join us. He's tied up. He really has one note for you. What is it? He says he loves the script. He loves everything about it. Your climax, your premise of the movie is that the company is expanding. The Slate company is expanding because they're building a whole housing development called Slate City, which is a parody of Century City, right? And that's why someone's embezzling, using the construction project to embezzle. It was the Kyle MacLachlan character in the movie.
Yeah.
And they promote Fred to make him a fall guy. All that works. The problem is we have to build bedrock to make this movie. We have to build an entire town of bedrock, but your script is requiring us to build another town as well. The budget, I go, oh my God, you're right. You are so right. So Steven's suggestion is, what if the factory is just modernizing, right? So we already have to build a Slate factory. So we just have to remodel the existing set. It brings the cost down. Your story still works the same way. Great, fine. Okay, so I'm glad you're. I'll tell Steven you're on the same page as he is, and we'll get you back in here next week to see him. A week later, my agent calls me and says, "You're not going to have the meeting." I go, "What do you mean?" He says, "They decided to go in another direction." I go, "This makes zero sense. I don't understand this." Anyway, years go by. And years go by, I see in the trades, another person's been hired, writer after writer. Finally, I see that the movie is about to start. And then the next thing I know is there's gossip in the newspapers that I don't see the gossip. I go to a movie theater one time and I see a poster for the Flintstones coming in like December, whatever it is. And there's 32 names as the writer, not including mine.
Wow.
So it turned out what had happened was the director of the movie had come out of sitcoms, and in sitcoms they have what they'll do is they'll do a punch up, right? So he invited literally like 24 people to come to a brunch and read the script aloud and add jokes. And somebody, there's a rule in the Writers Guild that you cannot propose more than 3 names for a movie credit. Now, the three names could be 6 people because there's writing teams. So sometimes you'll see a movie, you'll say written team, but if you actually look at it, there's a difference between an ampersand and the word "and."
Mhm.
The ampersand's in a team. So somebody was asleep at the wheel, both at the studio, to even send in 30 names. And somebody at the Writers Guild, the minute it came in, said, "You cannot propose this credit." So somehow it got between it fell in the gaps. The posters went out, and there's all this mockery all over mainstream media. How many writers does it take to write Yabba Dabba Doo? So anyway, when they send out, I hear that the Writers Guild has started to determine the Writers Guild had a statement. This was incorrect. The posters are being pulled. The new credits are being proposed, and we're beginning to determine the credit arbitration. The Writers Guild is the ultimate word. So I noticed the credit arbitration hasn't started, and I have not been called. What would happen? Somebody with the Writers Guild would say, "We have your current address. We're sending you all the scripts so you can make a statement if you believe you deserve credit." I don't get the statement. So I contact the Writers Guild. They were never sent a script by mine. So now I'm going to tell you my interpretation of what really happened here, which is absolutely the accurate interpretation. Somebody at Universal realized that if they shot my script, they would be endorsing all of the people at Columbia who had worked on the movie. Rob Cohen, Joel Silver, Keith Barris, the other producers on there. They would be tied into whatever contract was done at Columbia because they bought Hanna-Barbera Productions. And Joe Hanna and Bill Barbera, I met with them before I did my script when the movie's going to be in Columbia. So by saying we're making a fresh start, they were hoping to sever all legal obligations to Columbia, to the old Columbia deal. That was the real motivation. And after knocking around year after year after year, they ended up either consciously or unconsciously, but when you see the movie, somebody went into the filing cabinet and got my script out. So I send in my paperwork to the Writers Guild. Look at the producers who hired me. Hanna-Barbera, they're executive producers of the current movie. I worked for them at Columbia. I have to be incorporated into this credit determination. So they did. And now they send me all the scripts. And it really was like dozens of scripts over the years. I just read the final shooting script. And I go, this is my movie. I recognize this is almost the first half of this movie is exactly like my movie. So the New York Times called me up and said, "What do you think the final credit will be?" I said, "The final credit will be written by me and the team of Parker and Genowine, who were the last writers on it." This is very common. The first writers and the last writers, when there's a lot of writers, everybody in the middle is treading water. And the reporter from the New York Times says, "Well, how do you know that?" I said, "I read the final shooting script." So that was the result. And during this process, by the way, Joel Silver called me up and said, "I need you to write a letter for me to my lawyer that I worked with you on the Flintstone script, and we had meetings," because he got paid off in the dark. So what happened was Universal ended up having to pay a lot of people who worked on the movie at Columbia. And the reason they tried to make the movie without my script was to sever that legal obligation. But at the end of the day, the pages speak for themselves.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. So one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, because I have like burning questions about this, but Beverly Hills Cop 3. So, I mean, it's one of my favorite franchises ever. And I read the original draft that you wrote. I bought it from the Hollywood City Bookshop years ago. And no BS, your script was way better than the movie we got because you had Taggart in it. You had this element with Axel having a niece running around the park. There's all these 90s references. And you have this climax with him in an old South ride and blowing up all these cliches and racist tropes.
Yeah, I know.
And the John Saxon character was the main villain, which would have been kind of cool. So how did it go from that script to this watered down premise with, you know, counterfeit bills and Eddie Murphy just not being funny that day? What happened?
Well, first off, what happened was you got to remember that a lot of studio thinking is like weather vane thinking. Like they should say we're making this movie, but they're not immune to outside events. So the original script that I had, which Eddie loved, and it really tore Disney into it. It was a real mockery of the whole Disney culture, to such a degree that we originally sent the part of the Walt Disney character to Dick Van Dyke, and Dick Van Dyke said, "This is an insult to one of the greatest men I ever worked with." Like, you know, he took it personally. We weren't, but the Walt Disney character is a wonderful guy in the movie, you know, if you think about it. But
yeah.
So anyway, he passed. So what happened was, and the original premise was that he's on a vacation and he takes his niece to Disneyland and he sees something odd there. That's how he got to Disneyland. There's a murder while he's there, and he knows it's not right. That's how it was a plausible way. Now, right before this, we were supposed to start the movie. Eddie did a movie called The Distinguished Gentleman, where he played a guy who had the same name as a popular congressman who had just died, and he gets elected to Congress, and he's a con artist. But it turns out in the course of the movie, he meets a woman who is representing a bunch of children who got cancer from power lines. Now, right away, this is a urban myth that you get cancer from the big power lines, you know, and the movie failed. So they come back and say, you got to take the little girl out, the niece. The audience doesn't want to see Eddie Murphy with little kids. And I go, no, the audience doesn't want to see Eddie Murphy in a scene with 12 bald kids who have cancer. That is totally different than a cute little niece. Take out the little girl. So then I did a revision where he ended up meeting a girl in LA who worked at Disneyland, right? And the romance took him into there. So that pretty much was still the same script, except we got into the fake Disneyland in a different manner. Then Eddie Murphy had another movie he made called Boomerang, which was a rom-com, which also tanked, right? Did not do well, underperformed. So they said, take out the romance. They don't want to see Eddie in a romance. And I said, no, that's not the way it works. I think that movie was, had other problems, so they keep like whittling away at the script and removing things that related. Then they had a budget problem where the movie was very expensive. They wanted to cut the budget, and the original producers, Simpson and Bruckheimer, said, we can't do the movie at that price. And they brought in other producers. So step by step, like this thing is like being unraveled. So finally, I ended up doing a script that was a lot like what you read. I introduced the counterfeiting. I think the counterfeiting was, I don't know if the villains were counterfeiting the first script, but I'm responsible for the counterfeiting plot, which makes sense that they were using they make their money, Disney bucks and stuff. It was a plausible thing that you can use. It was a perfectly good MacGuffin, as we say. I at this time I'm done, and all I owe them a polish, like the last bit of tinkering. And I get a call from John McTiernan, who's doing the third Die Hard movie, and he wants me to come in and do the third Die Hard movie with him. So I go over and meet with McTiernan, and they had a script called Simon Says they wanted to turn into a Die Hard movie, which was the bomber script. So now I want to make a deal where I want to go write the Die Hard movie. And all of a sudden, John Landis says, "Oh no, I need that polish from Steven." Now, actually, because of what's going on with the movie, the clock had run out on the polish. Like you have to ask me to do a polish by this date, or I'm free. And the date was gone. So Landis says, "I have to have Steve. He's the only one. He gets me. He's got to do this polish. I can't let him go." And now studio management gets into it. It's Paramount versus like 20th Century Fox. And my agent and my manager say, "You've got to, even though the clock ran out, you cannot piss off Paramount. They've been for 100 years. You've got to deliver the polish. You got to go do the polish for John Landis." So I go in to see John Landis about the notes he wants to give me, and all his notes are only about the fictional Disney characters. Like I had a character, like there was a pig called Virginia Ham. I think that's kind of funny, Virginia Ham. He says, "Call it Priscilla Pig." So I realize it's about ego. Landis did not want to let me go to work for a rival movie. So I couldn't do Die Hard 3 because I had to come up with new names for the people in the costumes.
Oh my God.
So now I have to go. Now I go to Australia to make Street Fighter. And the Writers Guild has a rule that before a movie comes out, if you worked on it, the studio has to show you the movie in case they screwed it up and you want to use a pseudonym. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm in Australia, and this is like, way back in the 20th century, 1994. There's no way to like put it online where I can watch it on YouTube. And they sent me the final shooting script. The script they sent me, the final shooting script, looked like my script. But unbeknownst to me, in a couple of months a gap, John Landis had 5 other writers come in, and like all of them worked separately. It's a thing they were doing a lot then. He had 5 writers work separately, rewriting different parts of the movie, and then he assembled this Frankenstein monster. And then the budget got cut again. So instead of building the theme park in my script was America Land. So they had like the gay 90s. They had, so of course, the climax was Dixieland, where it's all robotic South, and there's Confederate soldiers and a Kentucky colonel. It was like a wonderful thing to blow up. And so they ended up, Paramount owns some like generic amusement park somewhere. So they filmed in some generic amusement park, and they built this like dinosaur ride for the end of the movie. But to even make it, because they had so little money, they had to sign up dinosaur ride under construction, so it could be half-assed in the movie, right? Because they couldn't really afford to like actually make a dinosaur ride. So this was a movie I would have taken my name off of. I really would have used a pseudonym because the final script represent like 5 people like taking my script into an alley and beating it to death. But none of them, to get your name on a movie, you have to contribute a third, which is, it's not page count. It's like, it's not just page count. It's like, impact, like if you did a movie like The Crying Game, listen, I can only work one day, but what if the girl's a guy? Thanks, I got to go. That would be enough to get credit on The Crying Game. Oh my God, that changes the whole movie. So it's not always about page count. But none of the other people, none of the 5 people that jumped all over it and beat it up in an alley contributed a third, because there's 5 of them. Do the math. So I got all the blame. So I go to the cash machine. I go to the cash machine with under a hoodie when I get a residual check on that one.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I also want to ask, was it true that you and Joel Silver went to Eddie's house and he kept you waiting for an hour for the meeting to talk about the movie?
That is true, and it probably was part of the reason that Joel left the movie. And had he stayed on the movie, it would have been a better movie, because Joel had a real tradition of sort of fighting for what he thought worked on the page, and he thought the script worked on the page. But what happened was, we were waiting about an hour. He was cutting an album. He had a studio in his house. And finally, Joel got fed up and says, "I can't believe this. I made this kid a star." And he keeps waiting. And he doesn't realize at this moment, Eddie's wife had just crossed on the balcony to like take the baby from a nanny. And I'm going, it's like the movie, like, in the movie where they go, "He's right behind me, isn't he?" Right. But like Joel never got it. I'm going, and he's going on. He says, "I can't believe it. He should be paying me. Well, I'm paying him for this movie." So he goes on. So then I go, then about 10 minutes later, I get a message, "He won't be meeting you tonight." And then Joel left the movie. and then it was a couple of producers on the lot that were just assigned it. So he went from had Joel stayed on replacing Simpson and Bruckheimer, it would have been the movie the script that you read. My favorite story about this thing that I still to this day I can't believe it happened in 1994 is I said there was a big reveal that the girl he's dating, and by the way, you notice the finished movie, there's not really a romance with that girl because they said she can't really have a romance. So
yeah,
like,
just hinting.
because they don't want to see Eddie in a romance. On top of this, right before they start shooting, Eddie decided he didn't want to be funny. Like, there was a memo. That memo said what happened when he was looking at what Denzel was doing, everybody, and he wasn't being taken seriously. So at this time, he just decided he didn't want to be funny, and they said they started taking comedy out of the movie. But the craziest thing I remember is I had a big reveal at one point that after Uncle Dave was shot, that the studio they wanted to do some kind of like shady thing with the stock market or whatever. They discovered the girl that Eddie was dating was Uncle Dave's executor because he really was her uncle. So I'm in a meeting with Paramount executives, and they said, "How could a black girl have a white great uncle?" And they go, "You really need me to explain this to you?" You know, no, that's impossible. I mean, I go, wait a minute, and I'm drawing charts, listen, I'm related to Bob Marley. My cousin is married to Bob Marley's cousin. You see how that works? I mean, right? So I said, no, the audience will be confused as soon as you say that. They're not gonna. So I still remember that to this day. That a black girl cannot have a white great uncle.
Yeah, try doing that in this climate. You know?
Yeah. Well, no, I think people understand it now.
Yeah,
the Kardashians explain it to all of us now.
Oh yes, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about Street Fighter, and again, just like Die Hard, it's been well documented all over the place. But I have two questions for you. One is, out of all the movies you've written, what made you decide to direct it? And just to dispel a rumor I've heard since I was a kid, is it true or not true that Capcom gave you a console of Super Street Fighter 2 and you played it for hours, and that's how you came up with the script?
No.
Okay.
I knew the game because my kids would go play it in the arcade, so I was familiar with it. What happened on this one was, again, you got to remember, I started out directing like a Cheech and Chong movie, type of a stoner movie. I had directed some television. I directed a Tales from the Crypt episode, which to this day people say is one of the top rated ones. It's on everybody's top 10 list, usually top 3, with Kyle MacLachlan, which is one of the few Tales from the Crypt episodes that was shot outdoors and has a lot of action in it. I was trying to show my chops off. So I've been looking for opportunities. And in fact, after I'd had several successful movies, I had multiple deals to write and direct movies, which for one reason or other didn't happen. There's like 4 or 5 scripts still like crawling through the development process that I'm attached to direct that didn't happen. So I had just done for Capcom a TV show called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, an animated show that's still on Amazon. So that Capcom was involved with that, with a video game, and I was the executive producer of the home video game of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, because I also did the animated TV show. And in fact, this was on the Sega system, which had a CD-ROM, and we had a pretty ambitious game. It got well reviewed. It was a run and gun, and where you were trying to stop the dinosaur poachers and not get eaten, and you drove a car. And interesting story. I went up to I had a young fellow who was one of my programmers who was in graduate school, and his student visa ran out, and he needed to get a work visa. So I signed the paperwork for him to get a work visa to work on this movie. His name was Elon Musk. That's right. I'm responsible for all of this. The Tesla that drove through that shop window automatic, it's my fault. No, seriously, you can Google my name and Elon Musk. You'll see Elon Musk first job was working.
I believe it.
So that's how I knew the Capcom people. So Ed Pressman called me up and said, "Listen, the Capcom people are taking meetings next week They want to find somebody to make the Street Fighter movie. I know you can work fast in a pinch. Can you come up with something? And I said, Tuesday, and this is like Thursday, Tuesday meeting. Okay, I'll do it, but I want to direct it. I'll send you a tape of my Tales from the Crypt episode, which shows my directing chops. You can show it to them. So they sent me a bunch of stuff to read, not just me. Everyone who was up for this was like America's Got Talent, I guess. A variety of people were sent this, but among the stuff they sent was a lot of Japanese material, and the Japanese material was all about expanding the game. The Japanese material was not just about the street fighting combat. They showed like this James Bond secret base that Bison had. Well, like it was like a Bond villain. So I embraced that direction. And so when I went in and pitched it, I felt that the problem with sports meetings, I felt that the number one situation is the tournament movie is been done to death. You had the original one that was great was the Bruce Lee movie back in the day, the Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
And then there were all these low budget, karate tournament movies. And the problem with the sports movie, you sort of know where it's going. When Tom Cruise does a movie like Days of Thunder, and he's in an accident and they break his leg and they go, he may never drive again. You look at your watch and you go, oh, this movie's got another 40 minutes to go. I think he's going to drive again. So I felt that what I wanted to do was open it up and get beyond the street fighting contest. And I also looked at the background of some of the characters, and I wanted to embrace that, the backstories of different characters. And that's what I pitched. And they liked it, and they said, okay, we're doing it. But then as we got into it, the first thing that happened was I wanted to have a very small cast. And I said to them, the truth is most people, unless they're keeping notes, can only keep track of 7 things. There's a reason there's 7 deadly sins. There's a reason there's 7 wonders of the world. I said, can you name the 7 dwarfs? Right now, I'm challenged both of you here. Andre, Jeff, name all 7 dwarfs.
Sleepy, bashful. Oh, jeez.
My friends are going to kill me right now.
No, but the truth is most people can't remember all 7.
Yeah.
You get points, Jeff, because the one people almost always forget is bashful. Everybody always remembers they're kind of emotional. So I tried to cut this. So I had a much smaller cast. But as I'm writing the script, they keep coming back and saying, can you add one more? Can you add one more? And the picture was getting over budget. And they said, well, we'll give you more money, but we want you to add another character to it. And also they had a delusional list of who they could get. They were trying to get Stallone and Schwarzenegger, all big names. They said, we can't afford those people. Your budget's $30 million. And then they finally said Van Damme. And I said, yeah, but what about that accent? And they go, what accent? Because he's dubbed in Japan. I had dialogue in the movie that he was from Louisiana, but as you cut the movie together, it sort of fell out. So then when we go to make the movie, the brilliant plan was we're going to go shoot. I wrote the script. And I remember by this time, I had been a producer of television shows. And when I'm like the showrunner of Knight Rider, and I have to do 22 episodes, I'm responsible for like $40 million for that whole season. And every week staying on schedule and on budget. I know how to do that. So in my mind, this script was going to be 2 weeks location work in Thailand, right? And 8 weeks on sound stages in Australia. When they get the schedule and budget back to me, it's the opposite. It's 7 weeks in Thailand and 3 weeks in Australia. And I go, this is crazy. And they go, well, we get a lot of bang for our buck in Thailand. The money goes much farther, and there's subcontractors that, they'll open up the whole country to us. So this turned out to be, and I'm saying like, and I say, but Steve, you've never directed. And I go, I've been responsible for more money than this, and forget being responsible for 10 weeks of production. I've been responsible for like 6 months of production on TV. It's not the same thing. So we get to Thailand, and nothing works. The equipment fails. Everything shorts out. Lights go out in the middle of a scene. They said, if we have a sound stage for you, it used to be the main hangar for the Coast Guard. but they built a new building, and we're going to put a floor in there where it used to be just water, and that'll be your sound stage. And the outside of the building is what you'll use for the UN headquarters, if you saw the movie. Okay, but it turns out the roof was tin, and it was the rainy season. So everything we shot in there, it sounds like machine guns going off. So after 2 weeks in Thailand, we had to pull the plug and move and advance everything. And this created expenses and chaos. And the release date of the movie will not change. So 2 weeks in Thailand, we were like 3 weeks behind. I don't know how that worked out, but it worked out that way. But our biggest problem was Raul Julia had become deathly ill.
Yeah.
Now, we were told that he had come down with an intestinal virus, but he was doing a movie, which was his last movie. It came out after Street Fighter, about a priest in Brazil who was murdered for standing up for the indigenous people. It was a biopic. It turned out later he had had stomach cancer and had been operated on. So as it turned, our costume designer, Marilyn Vance, she got to Australia a day before I did. And so I already gotten a phone call from her, says, we got a problem here. He had lost so much weight. So now she's adding padding to the uniform. And I go, all right, I cannot possibly shoot him looking like this. Let me have the shooting schedule. Now, the shooting schedule, when we put the movie together, we said, are we going to cast martial artists and hope they can act? Or are we going to cast actors and teach them martial arts? And the collective decision was made, since the martial arts in the game have no resemblance whatsoever to actual real martial art moves. They're all these crazy, flips and sonic moves. Yeah. We might as well get actors we can afford, because John Claude took so much money. He's not, he's got $7 million. That was a third of our budget. I mean, a quarter of our budget. So he said, we'll get actors and we'll teach them the stuff. Here's what we'll do. We'll do all the dialogue scenes first. Right. And while we're shooting the dialogue scenes for a month, all the actors who are not in their dialogue scenes were being trained in the moves. That was the plan. And the dialogue scenes mostly involved Raul and his underlings. Now he said, I can't shoot Raul. I've got to push all his work to the back of the schedule and move everything else up. The whole schedule became about shooting Raul just the last few weeks of the movie. We want to shoot him just the last month, the last 4 weeks, and shoot 6 weeks without him. But now I ended up having, except for one scene, the scene where he comes down into the laboratory and says, Dr. Dalsim, how is our work going today? I had to shoot that scene early. And if you look at Raul in that scene, he looks very gaunt. But except for that, I just sent him away for like almost a month, and they're giving him milkshakes and fattening him up every day. And he bulked up. And that fight he has with Van Damme at the end, he really did a lot of that himself. But now I'm getting the other actors, the younger players, and they haven't even been shown any moves. I mean, like, they come to the set, they haven't been shown. I mean, they're rehearsing a fight scene like that morning. I had situations where it was so insane. John Claude wanted to go to the opening of Planet Hollywood, right? Nobody tells me. He goes to Hong Kong and he parties a little hard. He misses his flight coming back. So, like, Monday morning, where's John Claude? He's still in Hong Kong. What am I going to shoot? What do we have? What sets are built? Who's available? Who's not? I go, okay, the scene where the two guys break the other guys out of their jail cell. Now, originally, there was going to be a fight with 4 guys versus 8 guards. Nobody's been choreographed this fight. Nobody's trained it. So I end up doing like a joke where 2 guys punch and 1 guy comes out around the corner. So I'm like pulling the stuff out of my ass just to have something to shoot. So the upshot was that a lot of the fighting stuff involving the younger players was like very weak because nobody had the proper rehearsals. No fault on Benny the Jet, who's one of the best guys, comes from Hong Kong. There was no rehearsal time because of the chaos of the schedule. And after we assembled the first cut, we realized it was a little deficient. So we ended up going up to Vancouver and duplicating some of our Australian sets and shooting bits and pieces of the fights to amp them up a little bit. Then we turned the movie into the ratings board. And if you've ever seen the movie, this movie is not yet rated. About the ratings board, you have there's a school teacher and a dentist and a priest, and a PTA lady. And whatever happened, a particular time, I don't know whether there'd been there was just a little school shooting, not a big one, just somebody was wounded. Well, whatever had not the first class school shootings we get now, But whatever would happen, the mood of these people was they gave us an R rating. And I came out of television, 8 o'clock television. But $6 Million Man, The Bionic Woman, Knight Rider. These shows are very tame, and I know how to shoot PG. I shot a PG movie. They give us an R. All right, so now we recut the movie, and we're taking out like any spots of blood, any impact. We're doing I'm so desperate. I'm doing Saturday morning cartoon rules, and on Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, when our hero would find a poacher, like trying to shoot little baby dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
On Saturday morning television, you have the hero go like this. He throws a punch towards the camera. Then you cut to a tree. You hear a punch, and then the bad guy falls against the tree.
Yeah.
The violence of the punch is off camera. So I'm doing stuff like this, cutting the movie back. We turn it again. It's still rated R, right? You only get 3 chances. They tell you, right? So now I'm in a panic. I cut it back a little more. They give us a rating of G. Now the studio is in hysterics because the sweet spot is PG-13.
Yeah. Because
the teenagers will see it, and the younger siblings say, "Mommy, can I go with Billy?" Well, it's PG-13, but no teenager wants to see a G-rated movie. So he said, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do? How can we do that? We can't show it to them again." I said, "I got this." So I have John Claude come back in to the editing room. The movie is finished. It's put together. And I have him record one line. There's a scene where he's rappelling down into the bad guy headquarters. So I had him record a line. He says, 40 years of ROTC for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
So now we turn the movie in, and then the MPA says, "What the hell are you trying to do? We heard you slip that word in there. Well, guess what? You just lost your G rating. We're on to you. You got PG-13 and you'll like it." And we go, "Oh no, oh, how terrible." PG-13. Anyway, the movie was, very successful. It was actually tied for Van Damme's most successful movie. I said going in, the audience is going to expect a hard R movie with Van Damme, and they just did not understand that. Capcom did not understand that. So I think a lot of people were disappointed. I was disappointed the fights were weak, but I shot rougher fights, but I had to cut them back. I subsequently, for your audience, if you want to see a more competent example of my directing, and you can dig up the Tales of the Crypt I did, or right now on Amazon, there is a movie called Possessed, starring former James Bond Timothy Dalton.
Yeah.
It's on Amazon. I recommend that. That's a picture I wrote and directed that I think shows like, a production that, doesn't go off the rails. And
yeah, I gotta say too, I mean, like I know the movie got a lot of flack at the time, but I saw that film at 11 with my cousin the day it opened and had so much fun with it. Especially, just so you know, when you have Ryu and Ken fighting Sagat and Vega in that, I guess, locker room or bathroom, and he does the Hadouken, people actually cheered.
Yeah,
I mean, now it's like, okay, it's a silly flashbang, but it's still we went nuts.
We ran out of money. We had no money to do it properly. We had no money to do it properly. And the plan was always that in the second movie, it was just like in the MCU, like the first Captain America first movie was very grounded. Winter Soldier was very grounded, and then they spun off into more wacky. So our plan was in the second movie, we would get more into the fantastic stuff. Like, for example, we set up that Dolph Ziggler's exposed to these chemicals, and that's where he was going to get his stretchy powers from. So we laid a lot of pipe for the sequel. Strangely enough, the sequel, they spent $50 million. Our movie was 33. They spent 50 on the sequel and it made like 15. So like the more reality-based Chun-Li movie was not what the audience wanted.
Yeah, no.
My question, the movie Blast, which you wrote the screenplay for, adapted, how much experience did you have with the actual production?
Let me tell you what happened on this movie, and this really sticks in my throat, okay?
Oh, sorry to bring it up.
The producer of the movie called me up and said, "Listen, I have a script that was written by a German writer who does not really speak colloquial English. And my director is on a movie that is running over schedule, and we have to start pre-production on this movie in South Africa. And I know from, people I know, and that you were, a line producer, you were a showrunner, that you understand production. I've heard a lot of things about you saving movie. I have a whole secret identity. I'm the mild-mannered screenwriter, but I actually, coming up in television, where I would have to cut every episode of a show, and sometimes the directors would fumble, and enough people that are now big studio executives, who are network executives, when I interacted with them years ago, and would see me save the TV show in post, to the point where I have gotten hired to recut movies I had nothing to do with, to save them. Like I've got to be a movie doctor I got to be a script doctor, where I'd rewrite scripts before they shoot. But I've also, movies I had nothing to do with, I've recut. So he said, I know you do that. Can you go supervise pre-production in lieu of the director, and do the take out the worst examples of bad English, just make it sound like American thing, and I'll send you to South Africa, you and your wife, all expense paid trip. I'll put you on a safari after you have this production meeting. So that's what I did. So I was not even supposed to get a writing credit on this movie. To my astonishment, I was proposed for a writing credit on this movie, which I did not want, as the movie was just another copy of Die Hard. And I worked more as a producer on it. And my writing was simply to take the curse off the speeches that were just clunky English. So either by accident or design, the paperwork that was supposed to come to me from this producer about the credit has been proposed was delayed. So the minute I saw I was proposed for a credit, I wrote to the Writers Guild saying, no, I don't want my name on this movie. I want to use a pseudonym. And they tell me, oh, you only have 2 weeks to object. The 2 weeks ended yesterday, which was the day that the paperwork was delivered to me by messenger. So in my mind, this is deliberate choice from this producer to be able to promote the movie as a movie written by me.
I have just one more question for you. Now, you've had a number of unproduced scripts. I know there was a sequel to Commando. There was the famous Isotope script you wrote for Sylvester Stallone.
Isobar, yeah.
Yeah, Isobar, sorry. Are there any unproduced scripts that you wish could have been made into a film?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Isobar is one of them. The Commando, you still can make it today. You just have to like King Conan, let him be older.
If Disney allows it, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Disney, Predator meets Mickey Mouse. I have a half a dozen scripts that almost got made, that literally a month doesn't go by where some producer or director inquires about one of them. I mean, literally last week, 3 of my scripts that almost got made in the past were sent out, not by me saying, hey, you want to make them, just people like calling me up. And what generally happens, I really want to make this movie. And I go, well, that was originally at Sony Pictures. You have to like pay the turnaround cost. And so he says, well, maybe everybody wants to be the second person to write a check. So I did it. There's a famous script of mine that almost got made, that almost got converted to a sequel to The Crow. That for your website, I'll send you a link to that. It was recently, about 6 months ago, there was a big article on one of the websites about, it's a website that's like movies that were never made. And they said the Crow sequel almost got made, but it was a script that was not a Crow sequel. And then I was asked by the Crow people to turn it into a Crow sequel, and then it didn't happen anyway. But but that's one that independent of the Crow could work. I have a favorite script of mine is that almost got made a couple of times, is about an action movie star who's kind of in a rut. He's making the 10th sequel to his movie. He's getting a little bit old to be doing this stuff, and circumstances put him accused of murder and on the run, handcuffed to the movie critic who hates his guts. The opening of the movie is a scene from like a really bad action movie. It's like something that Steven Seagal wouldn't do this. It's like, it's like really horrible. And after about a minute of this really every cliche, the movie stops and the voice says, I can't go on. And you cut to a TV show that reviews movies. And it's this movie reviewer. who's like very bookish in glasses, but before the movie's over, she's going to let her hair down and take her glasses off and be gorgeous, you know. And then you see the movie stars watching this, and he's getting enraged, you know, like, I can't believe what, you know. So anyway, they end up being accused of murder, being on the run, and it became like a send up of action movies and a rom-com. And it's a lot like this movie, The Lost City, Romancing the Stone.
Yeah.
That's a movie of mine that's almost gotten made a half a dozen times. It was almost supposed to happen October 2020 with Pierce Brosnan as in the lead. And it got canceled because of COVID. And we were trying to put it back together again recently, and Pierce isn't available. And the director was going to be the director who did Con Air, Simon West.
Oh, Simon West, yeah.
So this movie was set up, scheduled, budget, going to start shooting in Italy October 2020, and so the plug got pulled on that. So I still have this week. I still have hope a couple of these things are going to get made because we sent them out last week.
Nice.
So hope springs eternal.
Exactly. My last question. I know you're probably asked this all the time, but is there any advice you'd give to people out there who want to be writers, screenwriters, from your wizened position?
Well, I would say if I were starting out today, I told you the story how, and I would say this to anybody: the way to break in is always to write a spec script. I'm one of the rare examples where one of the spec scripts I wrote actually got bought, although I changed it greatly. I had to water it down to be a $6 million Man two-parter. However, if I were starting out today, also given the fact that I'm also directing, I might just make short films and put them online, because a lot of people have been discovered just making short films. And it's not just not just filmmakers, it's talent. Justin Bieber got his mother put videos on YouTube. This actress and producer who did My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, her name escapes you right now. She took literally her bat mitzvah money, and she made a music video called "Fuck Me, Ray Bradbury" that she filmed in a closed down school in New York City, and put it on YouTube. Got an agent, and then got a TV series by making her own music video. There was a movie called Sky Captain of the World of Tomorrow.
Yep.
It was not a successful movie, but the director of that movie spent like a year, like living in his parents' basement. I mean, living it with his parents. I'm in a basement, just in his family home, making the first 5 minutes of that movie where a dirigible, the Hindenburg, docks at the top of the New York Empire State Building, which actually was designed to be a place for dirigibles to land, believe it or not. And there was another movie called Pixels, another flop movie.
Yeah.
But the fellow that made the movie made the 5-minute version of aliens attacking Earth with video games. So you can get attention making short films. So that's another way in now. So one way in is to write the spec script, and the argument, the debate rages: do you write a spec script, just the story you want to make? Other people argue it is better to write an example of a TV show you like, because let's say I'm a television producer and you guys write a script for me, and I go, wow, this is pretty good script. I have a medical show, and you wrote a script about, like, a doctor, but I don't know, can you take my characters and put them in your script, or can you only invent your own characters? And also, can you confine yourself to getting your story across to me in 56 pages? Because the script you wrote, your own medical movie about the doctor with the life-saving technique, it's a feature script. Can you have the discipline? So sometimes a lot of people I know have broken in, they'll look at their favorite show, like let's say it's Homicide SUV. Well, but not SUV, whatever. SVU. And they'll write an example of that, and they'll get it. The producer will go, no, we've done too many kidnapping stories this season, but you definitely have caught the voices of our cast. You do have an ear for it. We're going to give you an assignment. That's the way it works in. So the short film is a way in now for people, as well as the spec script. These are the tried and trues in. And I would probably be one of the people now doing the short films, because I started out doing films in high school and college, and I would want to show that I was the whole package, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's how I'm doing it now too. But yes, Stephen, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom, your experiences, and just, reminiscing about all the old films that we grew up on that kind of influenced us to do this and to pursue our careers. So thank you again so much for this.
All right. Well, it's my pleasure. I enjoy talking to you. Oh my God, I had to talk about myself for 2 hours.
No, it's all good. I learned a lot today.
All right. And thank you again for not asking me any questions about that. Just a brief, like not even legal marriage to Zoe Saldana. Like I said,
No problem.
we're both in Las Vegas promoting different movies, and I guess we had too much of that free champagne the studio provided, and it turned out the Elvis impersonator was not even licensed for marriages. So Zoe and I, in fact, if you call Zoe, she'll say, "What the hell? No comment." I don't know what you're talking about, because that's what we both agree that would be our cover story. So thank you for not bringing that up.
Yeah, well, I don't think Star Trek 4 is happening, so yeah.
You should probably cut this out of the show just to be sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with Andre. Thank you. This was everything I imagined and more. This whole conversation. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'm going to send you some links for your website. Remind me to do that. Okay.
Okay.
I'll send you the article about the. This is too boring to be on the show. You want to cut this out, but I'll send you the link to the article about the Unshot movie that almost became a Crow feature, and also send you the illustrations that got me in trouble in sixth grade. I guess it was 6th or 7th grade for my version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Yes, yeah, I think let's see that.
Inspire some other young troublemakers. All right, nice talking to you. You'll send me a link where I can find this. And,
yes, definitely.
We'll talk again.
All right, thanks so much. Have a good day.
You too.